Tonight's event I'm super excited about is Khalia Davis, and she is I'm gonna gush a little bit because I've known Khalia since she was about 12. I directed her in Once on This Island for Sunnyvale Community Players back in 2003, just a few years ago, right? And it was a joy to see her then. She then went off, she grew up, went off to college, and
Yeah.
about 3 or 4 years ago, time runs together. I showed up and I brought my 7-year-old, I think he was 7 at that time, to his first musical theater class. And lo and behold, Khalia was teaching the class. So it was one of these a wonderful circle of life, if you will, more than anything. So Khalia, I'm so glad that you could join me here tonight. And it's been wonderful watching your growth over the past couple of years, particularly in the last few years, and all of the exciting events that you have done around youth theater and youth theater initiatives in America. So I'm gonna hand it over to you for just a second. Please feel free to introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about you and what you're doing.
All right. Hi, everybody. I am Khalia, and I'm thrilled that I was asked to lead and help out with this discussion. My emphasis is in the creation of new work for young audiences. So I work primarily with theater for young audiences, but I also participate in producing content digitally for kids and families as well. And I have a background that's multidisciplinary as an artist. So I initially started, as you heard, as an actor. I started working professionally at the age of 6 in TV, film, and theater. And then I discovered that while I am trying to get that next job as an actor, hey, why don't I teach the kiddos why acting is great? And then I realized that I loved both those worlds. And so I have been able and feel very blessed and lucky to share in growing my artistry as a performer, but also growing my artistry as an educator in arts education, as well as direction and choreography. I'm a physical actor. I prefer to do physical theater, physical comedy, commedia dell'arte, viewpoints, is my background. So a lot of really crazy stuff happens physically, and I enjoy it, and it really translated well to the children's theater world when I was acting on the children's theater stages. So that is, I guess, my artistry. I am bi-coastal. I am originally from the Bay Area proud, grew up in San Jose. And then I went to school at the University of Southern California, and I got my BA in theater arts with a minor in musical theater because I'm crazy. And then I was working here in the Bay Area professionally for a while on different stages. And then I moved to New York, and I've been living in New York for the last 3 years. Okay, I think that's it, right?
Yeah. Perfect. And so she's right now back in the Bay Area because of COVID-19 and coming back. And so it's been great. Khalia, I will also say thank you so much. She has been an instrumental part in our EDI discussions that have happened really over the past couple of months now. And that is, we're super grateful for joining the South Bay Musical Theater family in that capacity. That has been super appreciative.
Oh, my pleasure.
Okay. So one of the, if you would, I wanted to start kind of with the overall organization of Theater for Young Audiences, the USA group, and they had this just a little quote on who they are. The Theater for Young Artists, this is the website, twausa.org, and I'll put that into the chat. They pair experienced teachers with talented artists and bring to life a broad range of academic subjects in a way that is both memorable and effective. This unique combination of style and substance harnesses students' own passion and curiosity while tackling substantive educational goals like vocabulary development, story structure, revision, and confident expression. I think, and in 2019, you were chosen as one of the Emerging Leader Fellowships for the 2019-2020 season.
Yes.
So that is one of the driving forces, and kind of as I've been educating myself about youth theater, and particularly the elementary, starting even basic at elementary school levels. How do we incorporate, and what have you done with the Theater for Young Artists to bring education to those theater for young audiences? And then there's also the subset of theater for very young audiences. So tell us a little bit about that, those initiatives.
Yes, so TYA USA branded itself that name and basically took up the mantle of being called Theater for Young Audiences because, as some people know the history, children's theater unfortunately started to get a pretty bad rap about what it actually entailed. And a lot of theater companies were like, well, we don't want to be associated with the negatives of like the stale performative work. We actually are trying to create work that students can truly engage with, they can learn from, and they can feel like active participants as they're watching and exploring. So TYA kind of came out of that, and then it encompasses any theater company that is creating work that is either performed by young people or performed for young people. And I feel really fortunate that I have been able to work in a number of these spaces as a creator and as a performer and as a director. And some of my favorite experiences have actually been for Theater for the Very Young, so TVY. And Theater for the Very Young is basically also known as under fives. So this is theater that is performed for kids that are not necessarily in elementary school yet, so they're still pre-K and lower. I just worked with Spellbound Theater Company in New York City. They're out of Brooklyn, and they're wonderful. And we devised a new piece for babies called Shakespeare Stars, and it is a Shakespeare show for babies. And so we had 0 to 2-year-olds in our audiences, and we had a great time playing with them. And what we did was everything that us as the actors would say were actually lines from different Shakespeare shows. So it all made sense because our dramaturg that was a part of the work with us, she herself is a Shakespeare aficionado. She teaches at the university level Shakespeare. She got her master's in it when she was studying in England, and she was able to find different moments that speak to stars, the sky. Motherhood was something we were also exploring. Fatherhood is something we were also exploring, being born, growing up. And then from there, we had different installations is what we kind of decided it would be. So we utilized a lot of lights, and then we had baby-proofed different gizmos and gadgets that they could play with and make sounds with and explore with. And the thing that I truly appreciate about that medium of Theater for the Very Young is the unpredictable nature of it. I know a lot of people talk about, oh, kids in an audience, they're going to say what they want to say. But when you have a toddler in the audience, they're going to not only say what they want to say, but they're going to do what they want to do, which means that you might have a baby that will come and sit on your lap for a very long time as you're still trying to get your show going, but it's really fun and adorable. So that's pretty much the distinction. TYA tends to be elementary and up, and then TVY is younger.
I love the idea of Shakespeare for under 5. That to me is, and so when you were performing that, was that what is their facility at Spellbound?
So Spellbound does have a facility. They use the old Stone House in Brooklyn, but this particular show was being developed through the New Victory Theater on 42nd Street.
Right.
It's Broadway. And it was part of their developmental workshop called LabWorks. And so we utilized their studios, and it's crazy because like at the same time, I like to tell my friends, like, oh yeah, I'm making Shakespeare for babies, but like right above me, the cast of Hamilton is rehearsing. So like we're all in the same building. It's fine. It's fine. And so we used that facility to do it. And we created these beautiful cocoons that families could have. So we had one floor mat that we used to project our images on, and then we had different like round carpet circle things that they would sit on, and then we would drape each family in their own little pod with this sheer fabric. So it had this individual feel, and we had moments where they could just connect as a family as we were going around and showing different puppetry to them. And then they were playing with lights and things like that. So it was really fun and immersive and different. Mm-hmm. And it was really easy to build up, and it was really easy to take it down.
Yeah. And fascinating that, you know, thinking not only is it sound, but you're talking tactile, anything that they can touch, play with, turn on, turn off, and knowing kids and toddlers at that age, they're so curious about everything that it's interesting to be able to think of hitting them, not only with the language, because Shakespeare ain't easy, even for adults, let alone for that age, but that it's almost very much falls in line with the idea of introducing them to second languages as a very young person. Those two, you can see how those would go hand in hand and are fascinating. Wow, that's I'm gonna write that down. I mean, this is what I'm going to do. I got people who'd be interested in that. So theater for young audiences, too, as we've kind of been discussing various things and various projects, one of the things that we have just talked about is exposure of children to theater at a young age. So, you know, as we're talking very, very young audiences, but also developing into the schools. And I know we have a number of teachers on this call tonight. So I remember, most of you guys know, or maybe you don't, I have two now teenage boys that are in, one's in middle school and one is in high school. It's far too fast, but it felt like yesterday.
How did it happen?
I was in the principal's office going, how can I bring, as a parent at that point where I was just a mom, how can I help bring that into the schools? And finding those little nuggets of incorporating some of this theatrical events into the schools. One of the things that we've seen very locally with programs like Starting Arts down here in San Jose is they have developed, these, it's pretty much, you pick up the, I mean, I don't mean to make this small, but pick up the phone and you can order your drama teachers to come in, and my kids had them at the end of the elementary school and absolutely loved it, where we both had improv classes in the schoolroom as well as the after school programs. So what would you say as far as developing something, bringing that into the schools? Is it just asking?
What I have found doing in-school residencies is that teachers are looking for another outlet that is going to help their students understand some part of their curriculum. It's also an entryway into students who may need to process and learn in a special and unique way that they might not be getting in a traditional classroom setting. And so you're offering them an opportunity to explore different parts of themselves through drama in that way. But what I found the most successful has been to have that relationship with the classroom teacher and just say, what are you working on? And how can I help create a more imaginative or creative lens that they can look through and they can participate in? So for instance, I worked with the first grade classroom, and they at the time were studying animal habitats. And so when I was going in and I was doing my theater classes, I was giving them the tools as little actors that they are, and they definitely are now. I always say, like, if you point to yourself and say, I'm an actor, and you repeat after me with a nice loud voice, you're an actor. It took me 4 years of college to get to that level, but for them, it takes 30 seconds. It's easy. And then from there, we're learning specific tools that are going to help them create the show to the best of their ability as actors in that way. However, the show I wrote for them was around animals and the different habitats. And I created this adventure that some of those animals were going on, but I used their input and what they were doing. So it helped bridge that gap and also created a connection to the material that they were working on also in school. And then they had this creative outlet to kind of get the wiggles and giggles out, but then also at the same time create something that speaks to the work that they were doing.
So when you talk about how you created it with them and based on around their curriculum, was that through observation of the kids, through just conversations? If you were
Sure. I mean, I think that, and forgive me, I should have said this from the very beginning, but this is everything that I say is from my own personal experience in teaching practices. They don't necessarily consider them the best practices, but they seem to be the best practices for myself. I know there's a number of really amazing teaching artists that are either watching or have participated in past events through your company. And so I do not want to discredit the work that they've been doing. But I will say that my approach, because I'm a deviser at heart, I devise in everything I do. So we use different physical movement exercises, character work to kind of explore what could potentially exist in wherever we want them to. So for instance, since this was about habitats, we just started by talking about what are habitats and where do animals live. And then I would make up a game that's like, okay, I'm going to turn around and count to 3. When I turn back around, I want to see animals in the savannah. And then they're showing me with their bodies what animals could live in the savannah. And then I'll freeze them and I'll say, okay, who are you? And then at that point, I can start to have them make a connection to some sort of character that could live and exist in that world. I also was working with a teacher in that we had so many students. I mean, we all know about public schools, right? So we had like 24 to 27 students in that class, and I had to section them off into different groups to make sure that each group felt that they had something to do and to offer. But that also helps because then I go, okay, in this corner is the savannah, in this corner is the Arctic, in this corner is the ocean, and in this corner is the jungle. And then go to the corner you want to be in. And then they self-selected, which left it easier for me to go, great. And then some kids were like, I don't care, Miss Khalia. And I said, wonderful, you'll be the narrators. Like, it just is really lovely when they can do it themselves.
Yeah.
But I will say also, on the flip side, I'm talking about an experience working in residence at a school in a classroom with a teacher, like a traditional teacher like that. However, I know that you brought up Starting Arts and other programs that are, what they're doing is they're providing the drama portion of their arts curriculum because the teachers themselves are not going to be teaching that. And in those cases, I think that what's so great and exciting about it is when you bring in that outside teaching artist to give them an opportunity to explore something else, you want giving the main teacher a bit of a break, but also that their classroom teacher is able to see their students responding to somebody in maybe new and exciting ways. Something that I'm really excited about is the fact that when you walk into a classroom, you don't know the students. You have no preconceived notion about them unless you've done some homework. Like nowadays, I definitely, because I want to maintain an inclusive environment, maintain that it is as accessible for all students as possible, I will ask some specific questions that to help me understand their community that I'm walking into. If there's anything I need to know. But for the most part, my teachers, they usually say, no, just come and like read the book and do a little drama thing and we're fine. And so I walk in and I'm going to be calling on whomever is willing. And sometimes those are kids that aren't necessarily participating in other aspects of their school day. So hopefully what the teacher is seeing is opportunity for a way to like get to that student and pull something else exciting out of them. And they're seeing that happen through the means of the arts and what they can do for them during the day.
Yeah. That is,
there was so much. There was a lot. I'm sorry.
I love it. It is, as we have been, I mean, kind of the theater community as a general has been, the Black Lives Matter movement that is so important with our society right now is hitting our theater community. And one of the things that we've been talking about behind, or at least for us as a theater company, going, how can we help with those stories, with seeing better representation on stage, is even going back to these young audiences and getting the ins with the elementary schools or younger, and starting the development there, and then building through that way. So I know it is something that our SBMT and many of the other local community theaters are already talking about, of going, how can we help further theater and the arts in the elementary schools, which is the first place that things are going to get cut, and trying to help change that narrative. And from kind of my point of view, it is the best way is to start them young. I know, I mean, I'm a theater mom, so but I saw when my youngest Connor, who's my theater kid in second grade, took on, they did the three little pigs as the three little pencils and the eraser, and they took the fractured fairy tale, they wrote their own and performed it, and the parents, and you could see him so connected to this, into that method of learning, that I feel, you know, very much bringing that into the classroom is so wonderful, and helping drive that that agenda forward. It's
true. When what you're doing also is you're giving different ways in which you can have these conversations in a way that is accessible for young audiences to participate, because they are seeing everything. They're experiencing everything. And if you're a teaching artist and you say, hey, I would really love to bring these particular stories into your classroom and have a literature hour, but then like we'll read the book and then we'll bring it to life within that class period. Or I would love to work with them to create their own show, and I want to hear their words and I want to give agency to them in that way. These are different points of entry that I think are so exciting, because you are saying, I honor the fact that these students are seeing these things, and therefore I'm going to provide work that they are connected to in that way, as well as I know that they are experiencing and seeing what's happening around them, and I want them to be able to process this in a safe way, but in a way where they feel uplifted and amplified in the process. And to have teaching artists facilitate that is really powerful, and it is sometimes so necessary, because they are in themselves that term, teaching artists. So they themselves are artists. They have that empathetic heart, and they understand the creative and imaginative world that a lot of kids inhabit. But they also are teachers, and they're going to take that opportunity to make sure that they understand the lessons and the messaging that they are putting forth in the work that they're creating.
Oh, yeah. I mean, teachers are heroes, and teaching artists are heroes too. I am very, it is a, just such broad reaching for me. I was, when I was initially talking with my children's schools about this, it ended up being overwhelming. And I just, you know, they put me on the fundraiser instead, and so I organized the fundraiser, which was a good fit too. So
great, cool. And because of your background as a performer, you were probably able to engage that audience and get them excited and hyped about throwing that money around. You were probably like, okay, everybody, you were working that room. You had that presence that people were like, oh, wow. And because you're creative, you were able to probably come up with some creative solutions too in getting them excited about participating in the fundraiser. Just because you're an artist does not mean that you're only relegated to doing artistic mediums. You can take that skill set that you exist with and then be able to utilize it in other ways. So sure, go on ahead and be a fundraiser, because I'm sure
they always loved my assemblies. That was always the big woo woo. Sara's assemblies. So you've had a great relationship with Bay Area Children's Theater, and they are super inspiring. I met with Nina Meehan, who's the executive artistic director up there. I met with her before I joined SBMT, so that was a good 4 or 5 years ago, and really I found her incredibly inspiring, and the whole work up there is wonderful. So would you, let's see, you have so many good stories that I think what we want to start, the first one that we'll start with is I think the day the crayons quit, which is a super charming book that when I read it to my children when they were young, I was like, this needs to be a play because this is hysterically funny and perfect. And apparently other smart people had that same idea. And so I'm going to play a little bit of a clip here. If you guys bear with me while I do my screen share. Let's see if I can do it. I hit this button.
Take out a piece of paper, grab my crayons and just start coloring anything I want. I'll make it come to life right there on the pages. That's why coloring is my favorite thing to do.
We quit. We're done, we're through, we quit. We used to want to work for you, but now we're sick of it.
But that doesn't make any sense. You're just crayons.
We're just crayons. We're individuals. We have rights. All year long, I'm working and drawing everything that's red.
That goes on, but you were the choreographer for this piece, which was new, and
I made crayons dance.
They did a great job.
Who knew? I mean, I guess they did a pretty good job. TBA Awards was like, hey, crayons dancing. Okay.
Pretty exciting.
So we were like really excited. That was, I believe, the day the crayons quit was their first nomination for a TBA award. And I think that just kind of started this idea that like actually children's theater deserves to be recognized on the major stage in a major forum like that. So I'm really glad that they were able to open that up. And I hope that other children's theaters that exist in the Bay Area will also start to get that recognition as well, because we're making really good things. Yeah.
And also, utilizing adult performers to perform their medium, which is, not, it's a hard job. So
yes, it's what I say, because I did it for so long. I still do it. And now as a director, and I'm working with those adult performers performing for young people, I always let them know, like, you need to take care of yourself starting now, because the energy that you have to put out has to exceed the energy that the kids are giving you in that moment. You have to like be over the wave, because otherwise you will get swallowed by children. So you don't realize how much you're exerting until you're done with the show and you're completely drenched and you're like, what did I just do? I don't know what just happened, but it was amazing and those kids were great. great. And it's such a high. But it takes a lot of work. And I would hope that through the years, there has been even more of an appreciation for the hard work that adult performers are putting into creating work for young audiences.
Yeah, so that one was definitely caught my eye, and it was about the time that I went, oh my God, there's Khalia. I'm gonna, and I started to stalk you. Oh wait, was that out loud? So, which then they've done a number of other new works. Judy Moody taking one of those books, which is aimed for a little bit higher age range, I think. And then the She Persisted the Musical, which was very exciting. This is the book a musical based off the book by Chelsea Clinton.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So I have another clip of that, and I will. So good. I hopefully will again share this as smoothly as I did last time. Weren't we proud of me?
Yeah, that was really impressive. Good job.
Thank you. Any way that I can get a little credit, I appreciate that. So this is She Persisted, the musical.
We walk on, we will not be ignored, not afraid anymore. We walk on, we walk on, we insist, we resist, nevertheless we persist. We walk on, we walk on. Everybody's got a place in life. Nobody was born to be denied.
Those are my babies. I love them. We coined the phrase persisters during that because
Oh, I love it.
I love those.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hang on. We're just gonna play all.
That wasn't one of mine,
all
but it's also very good.
imagine.
That's why it was great.
Talk to us a little bit about the creation of She Persisted, the musical, and it has now had a further life too. Which so yeah, just talk to us. Tell us.
Sure. I was very honored to be asked to direct for the world premiere of She Persisted the Musical. The incredible Nina Meehan just was like, you know what? I love this book. So she just cold wrote to Chelsea Clinton and was like, I want to do this book. Will you let me? And then Chelsea Clinton was like, yes. So we worked with Adam Tobin, who is the book writer and lyricist, and Deborah Wicks-Lapuma, who is an incredible composer. And we all created together, along with Miss Clinton, the show. And it was the hardest thing I had ever done so far because there was that added pressure of making sure that we are bringing her book to life. And I think what was so great about doing it again in New York was being able to say like, oh, well, we already had to bring the book to life. So we had to go like pretty much, we tried to be as close to page to stage as possible.
Okay.
But in New York, since that version had already been done, my friend M.K. Lawson, who directed a beautiful version of it there with the Atlantic Theater Company, she had a bit more clearance and availability to like go, okay, I'm gonna put my own spin on it. And what was so fun is that when you watch both of them, you notice that it matches the community in which it was being created. Like the one in New York, for instance, blatantly right at the top, the museum sequence in the beginning in New York, they had a security guard, and that security guard was checking in the kids, and they were looking at bags, and the kids were wearing uniforms, and that's very New York.
Right.
As opposed to, I chose not to have a security guard in mind because I didn't think of it like that. So stuff like that, which is really cool, that wouldn't necessarily have happened in the Bay Area. So when I was working on that production, I was a dramaturg and cultural consultant, because the thing that mattered the most to me was maintaining the authenticity of the performances that the actors were portraying. And in that, recognizing that a few of them had to actually go into that trauma that the women themselves experienced in their trials and tribulations. So the show, for those that do not know, mirrors the book in that you meet these women before they do their great thing. So the main actress, Naomi, her character is exploring different time periods and meeting these different women on their own journey, and recognizing that there's different parts to make them great, and that they weren't just born amazing, but because of that, we're showing some of the harsh truths of the situations that they were in. One of the most pivotal moments in the show, Ruby Bridges. And the reason why Ruby Bridges is in our musical as well as in the book that Chelsea Clinton wrote beautifully, is because it's important for kids to recognize that even if you're a child, you can still do amazingly impactful and powerful things. You could affect change. And to have that role in our show, I wanted to make sure that the actress who was portraying her had her opportunity to sit in the truth and reality of that situation of walking up the steps every day with the National Guard next to you, and you're 6 years old, and you have white people screaming really hateful, awful things and holding up little black dolls in coffins, and just the ignorance and meanness of those people. We had that moment in our show because kids need to understand that this is what Ruby went through, and yet she still persisted. She still was able to get her education, and she integrated a school, and she's 6. That is bananas. But what I'm loving now is that we have another opportunity with the work we are creating, that young people are seeing, is seeing themselves in the work, because young people are leading the movements. Young people have always led the movements. Pearl Cleage, an incredible playwright and author who's based out of Atlanta, she's everything. She spoke about how in her classes that she would go and she would teach and facilitate in with the high schoolers, the first thing she would do is go, so how old do you think the civil rights activists were in the 50s and 60s and 70s? How old do you think? And many high schoolers will be like, I don't know, like 30, 40, 50 years old. And she could say, actually, no, they were your age and younger. And that is what we are seeing today. Today, young people are the ones that are being the loudest, most vocal about what's important to make our nation better. And they won't stand by it anymore. So to create work that then they see that power reflected back at them on stage, I think is so important. So I'm hopeful that the new work that is generated from this time of coronavirus, of the Black Lives Matter movement, is work that have young people's voices integrated into it. It's not just watching Martin Luther King Jr. stand up there and give a speech, but actually seeing a kid named Willie who's 12 years old, who believes that it's better to love everyone and treat everyone with respect than it is to be spit on or attacked for the color of your skin. So I think the opportunities are so expansive, and I'm excited to see what is generated during this time.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And listening to those voices of the young people, younger generations, now that I'm old, is so heartening. And you know, as a theater maker, I hope that we will be able to provide a platform for those voices to be heard, and for those for the future of what is going to be coming out of this moment of pause. You know, that was kind of, we paused the show, we've paused the season, and I think, you know, while it's tough now, it's looking ahead. I have just so much hope on so many different levels, that is very exciting of what's coming. On that note, that was a wonderful segue. What has come out of your Corona? I believe you've developed Nia.
Yes. So I have a friend. Her name is Nia. She's amazing. And full transparency and disclosure, all I was doing was just brushing up on a skill. I think that a lot of us artists, when we were watching every single day your jobs, your source of income disappear, you go, okay, what am I going to do now? And until my programming all pivoted to digital, there was a couple weeks in there where I didn't know what was happening. So I was like, well, I'm not just going to sit around, because that's just not who I am. So I was like, well, what else do I love to do? And I have this beautiful puppet that was gifted to me by one of my best friends a couple years ago. And I had been wanting to figure out how I could use her. And I was like, oh, I'm going to just create a puppet show as a source of accountability for me to work on the skill. But then I was like, well, if it's a show, what is the show going to be about? And that's where I developed Nia's Neighborhood, to help children process the fact that they are going through this time. Because I started releasing footage of her in April. Wow, it's been a while. We're about to go on a season hiatus, because why not? Because all TV goes on hiatus. Right. Girl. But I was able to use her in just exploring all the different things that kids might be feeling and experiencing during this time of COVID.
Right. So I do have one more clip, and I think it's really, again, just providing an outlet for kids to relate to. This is Nia's Neighborhood, and she is finding. I did the playground. I thought I. Well.
Oh, I'm Nia. Welcome to my neighborhood. So, my friend Miss Joyce likes to go on long walks in her neighborhood. I went with her, and we found this playground. I can't wait to go on a slide.
Oh, no, Nia. No.
Nia,
sweetheart. Nia.
Yes.
Nia, the playground is closed. I'm sorry, sweetheart. You see, that is why nobody is here. The playground is closed. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Super cute, and just hang on. The YouTube is going to carry on for me. I'm going to shut that down. And you've done several little vignettes like that, and you guys can find that on YouTube by searching up Nia's Neighborhood, and I will absolutely drop a link or two into the chat, into the follow.
Goodness. Okay.
I know, I love it. I'm going to spread it around.
Okay. I swear, it's so funny. It's the first thing that because I love creating. I love producing things. I've been that way since I was a kid. But this is the first thing where I was like, I don't know, I'm just playing around, and I'm just going to see what happens, and I'm going to put it out on my Instagram, and if people like it, great. If they don't, I'm going to hide it. And then I kept getting such beautiful and positive response, and then I started to get response from parents and being like, oh, my baby is watching, or my little one is watching, and they're blowing kisses at Nia, and I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah. So I was like, well, then what else can she do? So she has a Juneteenth episode, and tomorrow we will be releasing a Pride Month episode, because I think that if we have an opportunity to engage in that way, then we should. So yeah.
That is perfect. And the one that I also loved is Nia found a little meditation corner. So, I know kids of all ages, including us adult kids, are really struggling with keeping tabs on emotions. And just the simplicity of her message, what really was one that I just, it was, I think the moment that I fell in love was just like, oh, okay, yeah. So breaking it down into the little tiny segments to connect with, again, children of all ages can look at it and smile and appreciate what the messages that you and she have been sending. So it is.
Oh yeah, no, she has her own life now. Like, I think my mom's managing her career.
Cool.
She's done quite a few appearances on different things, and I'm like, wait. No, I don't exist anymore, and that's fine. I don't need to. This is Nia's show. But yeah, she has taken off. She's doing it her own self, which I love. I'm very proud of her. I'm very, very proud.
Yeah, but you should be. You should be. She's charming and wonderful and sweet, and we love it. So, you guys, we are going to kind of open it up. I think if there's any questions that people have or want further information on, we would love. You can feel free to unmute yourself and ask, or just pop anything into the chat there, and we will ask. But is there anything that you can share with us now that things are pivoting towards this digital? Is there anything upcoming that you are have your fingers in, or are
interesting segue?
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
So yeah, I am. I feel very fortunate that I've been tasked with the job of bringing to life Jelani Memory's book, a kid's book about racism. We are turning it into a kid's play about racism, and that will be performing via live stream. Broadway On Demand is going to be the digital platform that will be premiering it, and it is a collective TYA organization piece. So all of these theaters got together and they are all producing it. And one of the things that's so exciting for me as the artistic lead, I'm adapting it and then I'm directing it. And our entire team are Black, Indigenous people of color. So everybody on the design side, as well as all of my artists that are going to be performing in the piece. And because it's digital, we have artists from literally all over. So we have artists from Hawaii all the way to New York. And it is so exciting to be able to bring them all together into one space to create this piece. It won't be very long because the book isn't very long, but we felt that it was necessary to find something that speaks to today, what is happening now, what kids are talking about now, and do it our way, the TYA way, which is, how do we engage immediately? How do we reach out to the kids and bring them in? And also, how do we help parents start a conversation that they can then have after they finish watching it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. How cool. I know you will keep us in the loop on, or I'll keep my eye out and keep us in the loop on when that is coming. And we will 100% support and however we can and help spread that word. So
please do.
Yeah, we're in. Sounds good. And then otherwise, so Michael had a question a little bit earlier, going back to the Shakespeare, Shakespeare thing. Can you speak a little to how that show in particular was written and developed?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know?
Sure. So I came in on phase 2 or 3. So they had already started the development process before I came in as an artist for them. And they were working with academicians that specifically know everything about Shakespeare. And what they did was they found a bunch of verses that were about stars and sky and motherhood and life and babies and newborns and rebirth. And they cut them up into little sheets and then they tossed it in the air and then they saw what landed. And then they kind of organized on the floor all of those slips of paper and tried to figure out how we can make it work so that it basically turns into poetry. And then from there, once we knew what the script was for me and my fellow actor, we started to implement all of the movement aspects of it. So if we're talking right now about A Star is Born, then what are the babies seeing in that? So we have puppets that were created where we had a mom star and a little baby star. And then we also had music moments as well. So what were the different devices that could make music? Everything was handmade by the company itself. We all were hands on deck the entire time.
Oh.
But the thing that was really cool is being able to say, hey, we can make Shakespeare accessible for babies. And you didn't even realize, but here it is. And they are entranced by it. And maybe they won't be able to say those lines right away, but they're seeing images, and they are reaching and they're touching and they are expressing themselves the way that they can at that age, and because they are involved in the piece. So it's really cool. I hope that answered the question.
It did for me. I mean, it's very organically found. Somebody who you said early on that the person who created it was a Shakespeare scholar. That is her passion, and it's seeing that it can still be relatable to such a young age. That's very cool. So a question from Clara. We can talk about, or can we talk about large cast musicals for youth to perform that aren't, for lack of a better term, white stories? Do resources and or bodies of work exist outside of MTI Junior? MTI, for those of you that don't know, is a licensing house. They hold a lot of the big Broadway shows are held by MTI Junior, and as well as Concord Theatrical is the other kind of big one. So the non-traditional stories.
Yeah. Here's the sad truth. There's not many. Because musical theater in itself is white. So you're either like, okay, we're just going to put a bunch of children of color into this show that traditionally is cast with white people, or it's a show with a bunch of animals, so we don't really care what color they are. But I think the thing that is exciting is that because theater companies are now, it's taken some pretty drastic things to have them wake up to this. And so we are grateful that finally they are. We have been voicing this for many, many years, but now they are, so we take it and we're like, great. They are hungry for playwrights of color to create more. And there are already established playwrights of color that have created good work. And so now people are asking for it, and they're being, it's being shared. It's being shared everywhere. So if anybody is interested in receiving information from anybody that is creating work, and they are part of the BIPOC, the Black, Indigenous, People of Color community, I am willing to send some names. I'm willing to give some resources. There is no comprehensive list, unfortunately, because there's so few. But I think that something else that's really cool is if you want to do a large cast musical, because they're just so much fun and exciting, and there's a lot of roles for those kids, just being very aware and intentional in the casting of that show. So making sure that the Black kid isn't always the villain, unless that Black child says, I want to be the villain. Giving them agency over that and saying that they have a voice in that way is really great. But yeah, it's really just about consciously choosing and navigating conversations if you need to have them. But I think especially with young people, they are just hungry for creating fun, exciting things anyway, and they don't necessarily need to do shows that are about slavery or the civil rights in order for them to feel seen as themselves. They don't need to do the Diary of Anne Frank for them to feel like they've been seen. I think it's more like, if they're going to do Beauty and the Beast Junior, who's playing Beauty, who's playing that beast, who's playing Gaston, and how can this be a really exciting experience for all of them?
I know in the school system too, it's also hard to necessarily reach out to draw. But I think some effort into reaching out to the kids who might be a little more hesitant, or it's they don't see themselves in that role on that stage. But to throw the toss them a line to please come and really encourage as much as you can. That participation. We presented Peter and the Starcatcher a little while ago, and one of the audience members connected to the only female in that cast is the gal who played Molly. It was very interesting to see this one teenage girl just looked up on that stage and was like, I see myself in you. And it was very much of an eye-opening moment for me to go, oh, when you see yourself represented on the stage, that connection is made. It starts with those steps. So
yep.
Thank you. Yay. We are always having those conversations, and they will continue. Diane and Michael kind of have the same along the same lines, interested in exploring ways to bring theater arts to at-risk kids, primarily ages 8 through 13, kids that likely haven't had any previous exposure to the arts. And how does your approach to that age group differ from the very young kids? And then how do we as community try and break down those barriers of getting into that age range?
Sure. So I've been working with 2 different organizations the past couple years that specifically serve underserved communities. And so New York City Children's Theater works in partnership with the ARC program through the Department of Education to provide theater to children that live in transitional housing and homeless shelters in New York City. And I had the great fortune of being able to provide after school classes for them. And the touchstone is that I was going into their community and I was providing theater to them where they are, so they could at least feel comfortable and safe in their own environment, as opposed to pulling them out of something that they know, and then not only just pulling them away from something they know, but then introducing them to something else that they don't know could be a bit jarring at first. So I realized that was a really great entry point in. And then from there, I also work with the Brooklyn Children's Theater, who has a program called Oasis, where they also extend to the homeless shelters in the Brooklyn area specifically, and they invite the children into their space. And they have had a beautiful working relationship with a number of those shelters to get kids to be involved. And the thing that has been successful with them and me working with them is meeting them where they are. Not trying to force them into the mold in which you think they should be performing. It is part of that white supremacist viewpoint that you have to be perfect, that it has to look a certain way, it has to be super polished. And in fact, if you release that and you just meet the children at the level that they are at that time, and you work with that, and you have the flexibility and openness to see what they can bring, that show will have a lot of heart. It may not look like the polished Little Mermaid Junior that you were hoping for, but it's going to be something really special because you allowed those kids to lead in the way in which the show would be developed. I think that is something that if you want to engage with the community, you have to be willing to accept that community for who they are, as opposed to try and change them to fit a certain mold. And I will admit that it's been easier for someone like me because I walk in and I look like them. And so I think also, if you have a theater and you're working with teaching artists, being cognizant and mindful of who you're hiring to go into these spaces and to lead those classes, and go, you know what, maybe my white self does not need to be in this space. Maybe this is not what they need to see right now. Maybe they need to see a person that looks like them in a position of power and leadership, to show them that not only can they be this amazing actor, but then they also can be the one that's teaching and directing as well.
Yeah. Excellent. It is, as we have this year of hiatus, it is on our horizon to pursue some of that work. Our studios, if we are over in East San Jose, and it's a prime location for a very demographic that we aren't normally able to reach. So I think that is absolutely interesting. So quick question from Karen. Any ideas for shows to get more boys interested? Very often a problem in theater, from young to old.
Whoop. Unfortunately, it may have to be in the roles, or not the roles, but the shows in which you're choosing, thinking about those shows and going, okay, what could excite them? And that is the unfortunate reality of all of us teaching artists and drama instructors, is that we're recognizing that, like, it takes a second to get those boys. And you recognize when you have a lot in your class and you're like, oh my gosh, we have so many boys. But if you don't have a lot of boys, recognizing that and acknowledging it privately, but not outwardly expressing like, wow, we don't have enough boys, because what that does also is it might affect the women or the young girls that are in your class, those that identify as female at the time, being like, I think that I would like to play this role. Is it a big deal that there aren't enough boys to play it? What if I wanted to be Oliver Twist? And this is exciting because there are no boys and I get to finally be Oliver Twist. So also just being really mindful of when you're in a position where you may not have the numbers that you would like, if you may not have enough boy identifying participants going, but that's okay, because we're still going to make this great show. And then reaching out into the community and go, what are they into? What are they liking? What are they seeing that excites them? And then figuring out how we can integrate. I think we're also really stuck in using juniors scripts. And again, speaking as someone who is a deviser first, there is a lot of power and excitement in creating original work. And what does that look like? What if you come in and you have a theme? And then that's all you do. You come into the room and you say, I have a theme for this show. And therefore you're not saying like, oh, this is Romeo and Juliet, there's love in it. Like, or this is Princess and the whatever, they don't have these traditionally female heavy shows in their mind. They're thinking like, oh, what can we build from just these little pieces and create something that we will really be excited about.
Right. And embracing that. I mean, I've played many a male in my past, and hey, it's
me
nice.
too. And honestly, I love it, because unfortunately, a lot of those roles were more active and fun and exciting, and there were too many shows where the female roles didn't do much. And so as a kid who, like I said, I was in gymnastics and I did clowning and I did dance and I wanted to move. I was always really grateful and excited when I got to play a male role, because they typically moved more.
And and again, it's going back to the stereotyping of the old of traditional musicals, of the female ingenue who needs the saving. And I think moving forward, it's just the path ahead of gender fluidity in casting, I think, is another thing that we're going to be seeing a new trend into, and it's wraps back into as much inclusiveness as it can possibly be. It's exciting.
Totally.
Yeah. Anybody else feel like jumping in and?
Yeah, we all do. We just, I see this comment, like we do. We would love to see more boy identifying students get excited about the arts. And I think that we just have to keep showing positive images of young boys in front of them so that they can see like, oh, okay, I see more of myself. It's all about representation. If you see yourself in that space, then you believe you can occupy that space. And sometimes it is intimidating for a young boy to walk in and see a bunch of female identifying students and go, I'm the only one. And then you start to recoil and not want to be involved anymore. And it's the same with anybody from any sort of affinity group. They might have that same feeling of like, oh, I don't see enough of me in that. And so you tend to lose. But yeah, that's what we all hope. We hope that more little ones want to participate.
When my son was younger, he's 13 now, so he started performing when he was about 7 or 8 years old, and at a wonderful dance studio with Miss Anna, who I think was watching on Facebook a little while ago. And with Miss Khalia was her first instructor. She's so very accepting and inclusive, and he's been with that dance company now for 5 years, and has seen some boys grow and then some, but it's very much keeping him welcome, as well as I did start pointing out, look, here's Gregory Hines, here's he was into ballet for a little bit, and we pulled out the male ballet dancers to show him as much as that positive reinforcement, as well as, I mean, he's lucky now. I work in the theater and has tons of male fabulous people who support him to the best that they can. So that kind of back and forth support too. Cool. Yay. Oh, here we have Beth. Can you tell us a little bit more about devising process when creating theater with children?
Sure. So it always depends on I guess it really honestly depends on like what my boss is like, this is what we would like to have happen. But I love to do this thing. My friend Andy Schneeflock pretty much coined this phrase called creators. And so what we would do is we would start with a whiteboard, and we would be writing on the whiteboard, okay, what should the theme of our show be? And then kids are just yelling out themes, and we're writing them all down. And then we'd say, okay, what is the setting? And we just write all their ideas down. And then we do a vote, because it's a democracy, heads down, thumbs up. And then we kind of mark off the ones that don't have enough votes, so then they recognize like they are the ones that have decided what the theme is and where it's going to take place. And then what we love to do is create sheets where the characters would be like, you have different questions that they're asking, like what the character's name is, what is their want, what are they afraid of, what is their catchphrase, what are they? What is your character? And this gives the kids an opportunity to create something that lives within the world that they were already starting to generate. And then from there, we write a script. So that's a pretty basic way that I have been devising for the last 3 years in New York with my friend Andy. But in that, it just like in a more expanded view, it's basically trying to give certain buckets and certain containers that we can start with, and then from there build out more of the story that could exist within it. So if you say, okay guys, we're going to do a story about friendship, and maybe you bring in a book that has to do with friendship, and you use the book to help inspire different opportunities in the storytelling and the story building. And then when it comes to physical work with these kids, I like to do games that involve them showing me with their bodies the environment that they want to create, showing me with their bodies characters that could potentially live within that environment, and then kind of working along with that. I would stop, I'd freeze them and be like, okay, so what would you say right now? And then they have to just say the first thing that came out of their mouth. And then I would go back. And so after I've gone to every kid, I'd go back to the first kid and I'd make them do it all again. And then I'd go back to the first kid and do one more time. And at that point, after 3 times, they know what that scene is. And I'm like, okay, start from the top, go off stage, come on the way that you came in, freeze, say your lines in that order that we are. So we just made scene 1. And then we continue from there, giving kids an opportunity to explore what they would like to say based on how they are moving and being in the space is really fun for me.
I'm muted.
Oh,
Sorry. Awesome. Yay. I think that organic is just, but I know. I just want to go play in a studio now.
yeah, come play with me.
Melissa has a question. It is a lot of school arts programs seem to be assemblies in schools that are geared to combine other subjects with the arts. When looking at these, what are some of the problems that you see with them and any ideas about how to improve them?
I assume that this is saying like, oh, we're doing a show that's based on a historical thing that we're studying in school, or like we want to bring in a scientist, but the scientist is part of an acting troupe, and so they're making science look fun. My apologies. I am a bit confused on what the question is.
Melissa, do you want to pop on and unmute?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm off. So I used to work with a company that went into mostly historical things, like the history of the United States and whatnot. In terms of, it seems like, I mean, it's very white centric, and so like that's sort of my when I'm seeing them, like that's like my immediate sort of, that's the problem with them, is that especially if we're going into schools that where white people may be the minority, that it's not really centering the children who are in the school. And so I was sort of like, is that, do you know of any ways to improve those, other just rewrite them all, which valid.
Totally valid. Thank you for clarifying that. I really appreciate it, and thank you for the work that you're already doing. I think that unfortunately we're all discovering that history was written by white people, and so there's a lot of erasure that has been happening with other cultures and other races within their history. And I think something that might be fun for our historians on the call is to have that adventure of discovering new stories. I mean, that's why we had movies like Hidden Figures come out and everyone was like, what? And it's like, no, this did happen. It's just that we didn't get an opportunity to learn about this, but some artist did that work, figured it out, wrote a movie that was mainstream, so it got out to everybody. So I am hoping and I'm really praying that there are people who are driven to discover untold stories of excitement and success and adventure, because again, people of color are not just their trauma. So what else do we do? What else do we offer? There's this great thing going around on social media about all of the inventions that were created by Black people. And like, if you literally took all of those away, that we wouldn't have a lot of the things that we're so used and accustomed to. And I mean, who wants to write a story about that? There are books that are about the histories of different cultures and how they got to America and their experiences here. So if it's something about the company wanting to maintain that historical context or that historical lens, be like, great company, you're paying me. I love this work. I love going to these community, but I'm noticing that the stories we're bringing to these kids are stories that they themselves cannot see themselves in, nor can they relate to. And just by hiring actors of color to perform in this way is not necessarily the end all be all. And so I would say, with respect to whomever you're working with, go, I did a little research and I found out about these individuals that lived in our American history, and it would be great if we could create a story or a show that centers around that story. And then we can bring that in, and those kids can see themselves in some way that's in a positive light. And so it does take a little work, but I feel like we're in the perfect time to just shake everything up. We should be excited about doing that work. Like, burn it all down. It does not serve us. It hasn't served us. So now, how can we be the artists and the creators that we are? How can we innovate and think outside that box that we're in? And I'm so excited, Melissa and anybody else who has worked with organizations that have used historical shows in schools and have not felt that it is showing everyone's history. What could we also bring to the stage for the young ones?
And I would say that if that's something that people are interested in pursuing, if you're on this call and want to talk, drop me a line. And I feel like that is an avenue that
over here. That's why I pointed like this.
we can pursue. We can pursue. So I'm gonna. Oh, I'm just, all these conversations they're very inspiring. And it's this time that we have that we can look at things in a different way. And I believe that this is definitely an avenue that is of interest and kind of exciting for the future. Any of my board members who are on this call, they may not know that, but we're gonna talk about it.
They do now, like, hey board, this is what I'm thinking. Yeah, it is why I love and have such a passion for theater for young audiences, because as Ernie Nolan, the executive artistic director of Nashville Children's Theater, said on a podcast with me a couple weeks ago that I just I've taken, is that it is limitless. There is no ceiling when it comes to what you can create for young audiences. You can literally create a show about bugs and have the kids sit in a park and you get down on the ground and you become the bug with your fingers and they're captivated by just looking at your fingers moving across the grass. And you're like, I'm a bug. And they believe you. And that's like bananas. But I mean, you can really think of so many different ways to engage students through the arts that may not be this usual modality that we used to have. I just think that there's so much more. There's so much more.
It's limitless, unlimited for sure. Right?
I'm not gonna sing that, but yes.
We'll just think it, and that's fine. Well, Khalia, I thank you so much for joining us and being so inspiring. I think every time that we chat, I walk out of there. When I grow up, can I be Khalia? That'd be awesome. I'd love that. And so we will keep in touch. If you come across links of interest, please send them my way, and we will try and keep kind of a living document going for people that are interested in more information on theater for young artists. And my friends who are on the call, if you would also send me information and links of things that are interesting or inspiring. And let me do what I always do in every call, is throw my email address up here if people don't have that. As much information as we can compile, having a one-stop shop is always helpful. And yeah, I am super grateful and thank you. And I think we've caught all I know. And now is the awkward post Zoom wrap up. Feel free, my guests, to unmute yourself and unmute your video and say anything that you want instead of just listening to me.
Hi.
Thank you, Claire, for coming.
Thank you for hosting.
Yeah, that was great. Everyone had such wonderful questions and insight in their own experience, and I'm learning consistently. That's why I felt a little awkward even being part of it, because I was like, I feel like I'm learning from everybody. So I appreciate those that were in the comments, specifically people like you, Claire, that I've worked with personally, and I know how great you are with students and making art with them. So yeah, I love this. I'm now reading all of these comments. I'm like, everyone is so smart. Oh my gosh, I'm excited.
I will read for Christina, who I know has a broken microphone, and we're sorry, Christina. This was so heartening and inspiring. Thank you so much for your expertise, Khalia. And the best teachers are always learning, though. Yeah. That is true.
Never stop.
Very cool. Well, again, everybody, thank you so much for joining us tonight, and thank you for being a part of our community. The eStudio, we just announced all of July's programming, so July is up, and there are everything from actors workshops to a trivia night to our next e-readers theater is the Book of Will, and that'll be on July 17th. If you don't know this play, it is a love story to the theater and capturing the history of what theater is. And I dearly love it. That's all coming down the pike. We've got an evening of Bob Sunshine playing the piano next week. And I want to say, as always, a big, huge thank you to our sustaining members who are allowing us this year of pause as we kind of pursue different things. They're keeping us thriving over our year of hiatus. So we appreciate you, sustaining donors, yay! And and please just keep coming back. And we've got tons of fabulous content as we just saw. Thank you all.
Are you cold, Algernon?
No.